Men, it's time to return to the land, to brotherhood, and to our hearts. Over the last 5 years, Sacred Sons has impacted the lives of thousands of men around the world, and this fall, we are calling you all in. I am so pleased and thrilled to announce that Sacred Sons Convergence 8, The Return, is happening in September and October of 2023. Sacred Sons Convergence 8, The Return, will have 2 sessions. September 14th through 17th, Convergence will be in Edinburgh, Scotland. UK and European men, we are calling you all in. And October 5th through 8th, Convergence 8, The Return, will be returning to the West Coast, Los Angeles, California. Let's go this fall. Join us in either Europe or North America for Convergence 8, The Return. Brothers, if you know, then you know. If you have been to a Convergence previously, if you have attended any Sacred Sons event, if you have been listening to this podcast and been on the sidelines, this is your opportunity to join this emerging and growing community. Join us in either location for 4 days of connection, confrontation, and celebration. All of the Sacred Sons leadership will be there. We will be doing the work on the physical and relational pillars. There is just absolutely nothing like this happening on the planet, where hundreds of men will be gathering together for one common purpose, and that is to connect to our hearts in brotherhood, in unity. We will be engaging in embodiment practices, group exercises, pillar talks, ritual connection, and ritual combat. If you are interested, please go to sacredsons.com and click on Convergence 8. Again, September 14th through 17th, The Return to Edinburgh, Scotland, and October 5th through 8th, The Return to Los Angeles, California. We have a limited run of early bird tickets on sale this Thursday, June 1st. Both of these events will be at capacity, so do not miss your opportunity to get your tickets now. And with that, this podcast is one of my favorites that I've heard in the history of this show. 2 of my brothers dropping in, going deep. If you're new to this movement, listen to our brothers talk about their real experience and real transformation that's come as a result of doing this work in brotherhood. Please welcome Kevin Walton and Joe Speredon.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning into the Sacred Sons podcast. You got your man Source Radiance here, and I'm rocking with my dear brother Joe Speredon. And you got to say it with that little whisper. I took you to Speredon. Awesome, brother. I love this man. And right now we're residing here in Florida at our Sacred Sons Leadership Summit. How you feeling, brother?
Good. It's different than Utah here.
Yes.
It's a lot warmer, which I'm happy about.
It is warmer. So I would love to hear, I'm sure everyone tuning in would love to hear, what was your initiation, your introduction, and your first experience with Sacred Sons like for you?
Sacred Sons, I found, was introduced to when I was really in the midst of like a panic, anxiety, kind of cliche as it might sound, midlife crisis, existential crisis. Also happened to be in the middle of 2020 when everybody was, dealing with some things.
Yeah.
And really was at a point in my life where I felt like I had done all the things I was supposed to do. I had the family, I had the kids, I had the job, I had the house, I had all these things that I was told were going to make me feel happy and complete. Mm-hmm. And I was very happy with the things that I had and the people that I was blessed with, but there was still a high level of anxiety inside of me. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, I was introduced at that time to Sacred Sons and saw that Convergence was coming up, Convergence 4.
Yeah.
And it looked terrifying. Did not look like me as far as I could see from the, the posts and stuff. It was this idea of I'm middle-aged, middle-class, white, Christian, father of 4, 401k, just very stereotypical suburban dad. And that's not what I judged all these other men to be. Mm. So I showed up and turns out we're all the very same. As in we're all struggling with the same things. We're all fighting the same things. We're all dealing with the same emotions. We're all not talking about the same emotions. And it was beautiful to see that and to be received by these men. One of which was you. Whereas, we were at that event and we come into this tent with Stag Squad, with, J-Mac.
Yeah.
And, I was really going through it. I was still not sure if I was supposed to be there. As a matter of fact, right before that event, we were in together and we ended and they said, all right, you're going to have a little break and then we're going to go meet with Source. And I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. And I'd driven. So I went and I got in my truck, took off. I was going to leave.
Yeah.
And
what was the thing that you touched on there when you made that decision? What was what was most alive for you? What was that edge? Where did you land when that initial decision happened?
This wasn't going to fix anything for me.
Yeah.
This was all feel good and, just nice kind of lovey-dovey. We love everything and everything loves us. But there didn't feel like there was anything practical to that, right? And frankly, I was scared. And so I wanted to run away.
Yeah.
There was the way that I justified it, and then there was the feeling beneath it, which is I just wanted to run away. I wanted to escape.
Yeah.
And as I was driving away, I thought about my children. I thought, what am I going to tell these guys? Dad couldn't do it. Dad left early because I owed them, in my estimation, the best version of myself.
Yeah.
And they weren't getting that. Nobody was at the time. And so I turned around and came back. And Troy Campbell, who was my accountability buddy, still is to this day, it's like, where have you been? He was not happy with me. But we went in and we started listening to Kevin Walton talk about creatorhood. Yeah. And so here I am in the midst of panic, anxiety, just feeling so acted upon, so much of my life I didn't like, I didn't want. And one of the first things that Kevin says to me is, I create my reality from within 100% of the time. And that made me so angry. I was so angry. And I was like, wait, I'm creating this? Yeah. Like, I'm calling this in? It's like, I'm miserable. Yeah. I'm not calling this in. And so then, we have that conversation where I'm like, so if I come and punch you in the face, you're saying that you called that in. And what was amazing is you were like, hey, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. That kind of put me back on my heels. Like, really? Like, yeah, I'd have to figure out like what I was doing to have created this situation as well and to have invited this into my life and what that was there to offer me. I was like, wait, what? So again, luckily we stuck around.
Yeah.
And the verbiage that you used was like drinking from this fire hose, right? But it started to make sense. And it started to land. And I realized that if I owned my reality creation where I was at, that was the thing that empowered me to make changes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because up until that point, all I was trying to do was manage everything outside of myself. This person needs to behave a different way. This person, my boss, the weather, the government, the economy, they all need to be a certain way. And if they are, well, then I have a chance in hell at happiness.
Yeah.
Right? But it wasn't sustainable, obviously.
Where do you feel like that came for you? Like, where did you condition yourself to live by that initial framework? Like, where did that derive for you?
That's a great question. I think in general in society, very much it's this idea of external cause, internal effect, right? Like everything outside of myself is what's going to determine whether I'm happy, whether I'm empowered, whether I'm equal, whether I'm whole, any of that type of stuff. For myself, growing up, and this is, no negativity towards my parents or anybody else, but, good example, I would say this is hypothetical, but it's not. Let's say little Joey is, 9, 10 years old and he steals a candy bar from the store, right? Yeah. And he gets caught stealing that candy bar. So then what happens? Well, in my culture, where I was at, the store's mad at me, right? Because I stole their stuff and I need to make recompense with the store. My dad was upset with me and angry with me. My mom is sad. And also within the religious conditioning, like I've upset God, right? And God is upset with me. And so what happened at that point is for me to be happy again, for me to feel peace again, my job was to make the store feel better, make my dad feel better, make my mom feel better, and make God feel better. But nobody ever asked me like, hey, why'd you steal the candy bar?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what I learned was if I can control all of these things outside of myself and help everybody else feel good, then I can be at peace. Right? And so that's just one example of so many different things that happened over the course of my life.
Well, that became the
that became the standard of I need to be doing that for everybody else.
And what do you feel like was that the breaking point when you realized I really have to make a change? What was that feeling like when you felt that buildup, right? Because you can imagine, like we talk about often, the weight of walking around thinking you're responsible for other people's feelings, right? Like, is there the responsibility of decisions we make, right? Obviously, yes. If I stole a candy bar, you have to own the fact you did that.
Right.
I love your recognition of it. No one asked why. Like, no one wanted to explore what was driving you to do that when that can provide so much insight and can create a different dynamic and connection. But your recognition of that, when we recognize that drudge and unsustainability of, I got to make everyone this so I can this. What was that final straw or that breaking point where you're like, it's important for me to like address this, get support, make a change? Was it a series of, was it like a one smack in the face event? What was that catalyst for you?
Yeah. And again, it's somewhat emotional to recall. There was one Sunday I was with my family after church, and I was feeling all of this, and I was feeling it deeply.
Yeah.
And I'd never before really even had suicidal ideation or anything around that, concept. But as I was sitting there and realizing how worthless I felt to my family, how little I was contributing to them, to anybody else, and how the way I was showing up was not helping anybody, including myself. And I had the thought, it would be better if I wasn't here. And when I had that thought, I felt relief. I felt this level of like alleviation. And that scared the shit out of me.
Legit.
Because I'd never felt that before. And so while I felt that, I also knew that I couldn't do that to people that I loved. And that I needed to get some help. So still operating kind of from the space of, I need to do this for somebody else. But I'll take it because it got me here.
Yeah.
Right. It got me to Sacred Sons.
Absolutely. So with that, and thank you for that and feeling that emotion towards it. Like, I appreciate it. And thank you for allowing me to witness you in that. Because it speaks to your heart and the nature of your values and what matters to you. You know what I mean? That's an important thing to have. And with that, right, with that same passion and heart that you wanted to support that, like shift and change something in your life so you can show up greater. When you first read the confronting thing about reality creation, when that showed up for you and it started to land, what was that like for you, that shift, and how did that support you in going back? What was that transition like for you in that adjustment?
So driving back, because again, I was actually very blessed that C4 was sold out. And I got in at the last minute because somebody else had canceled and I purchased their ticket.
Come on, reality creation.
Right? Awesome. So wonderful. Yeah. I want to go look that guy up and thank him profusely. For whatever reason he had to cancel. I'm going to find you and just hug you and love you. Because it changed everything for me.
Straight up.
So I had 11 hours to drive from Utah down to Liberty Rising. And then afterwards, I had 11 hours to drive back. And after, 4 days in the desert with these men and these experiences and these concepts that I had never before even considered, and then having that 11 hours to sit with those thoughts, I felt a different kind of alleviation. I felt this liberation, right?
Yes.
And that liberation was, I have choice. I can make different choices in my life and start experiencing different things. And so I decided, what do I want to experience? What do I want to do differently? And rather than managing, well, if I do this differently, how are these people going to react? I just got to think about doing it differently and not necessarily taking accountability for how everybody else was going to feel about that. I knew there was going to be a level of that I got to confront and get to speak to, and that was okay. And I still do.
Yeah.
I spent 40 years up to that point in a very typical family setting, again, middle class, within the LDS church and the culture there. And none of it was bad. But when I'm coming back with a lot of different ideas and a lot of different concepts and philosophies, I knew there was going to be, some ripples that came from that.
Yeah.
And there was.
And what was that experience like? The ripples you meet, and I love you have the awareness of it. When those ripples started to take effect, what was your initial experience of them like for you?
Yeah, it was.
Because I imagine, is it kind of jarring for them, or not, or just more like questioning, like what's happening with you? What was that like? In that sense?
Fortunately, it was still a process. I still had things that I was learning, and so the changes that I was making were small to begin with, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it was just simple verbiage that I started using. And it was kind of funny to have that reflected back to me from my family of like, Dad, you say this thing now all the time. And half the stuff is, stuff that Kevin Walton says. But I'm saying things that Adam Jackson says and Jason McKenzie and just the way that I'm speaking about my feelings, or that I was speaking about my feelings at all.
Firstly, straight up.
That was already just a huge change. But none of it was bad, right, at that point. None of it's been bad ever. There's just been some things that maybe were more jarring for extended family or, church leaders or friends or, stuff like that. But overall, it's changed the way I show up in so many beautiful ways for all of those people.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And as you express that, I reflect on our initiation together in that moment. And it was such a powerful and profound thing because you could, from my end, I could see the visceral steam, right, in you, in the desert, in this space, in this massive man right here. And it was a beautiful thing. And when you could see you going through it, and in that space where that asked that question, and it was such a, all I could feel in my heart was just the direct invitation of that offering. Yeah. And when responding, it you could witness the genuine click. It was just a complete shift, right? We're like,
right.
What? And I love, from my end, everything I witnessed of you, even in that setting, the rest of the remaining time there, and then the journey that you've been on ever since, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's been such a powerful thing to witness in you and your commitment and dedication, because it speaks to the truth of yourself and how you really want to show up in this world. And I see it in you, and even with the dynamic with the family. And I love that what's also interesting about it is I think about the dynamics where if we're used to being in a certain environment, a certain way, everyone's defined a certain way, they're used to feeling that. And then you're having this evolution of self through these concepts. And so you're stepping back into that field, and it could be an easy story to be like, well, I'm just going to shut this down now because everyone's going to get weirded out and I don't want to freak nobody out. And then have that eat away at you more because you won't unknow and be unaware of what you've now tapped into.
Right.
Right. But what I noticed in you, even though it's been a journey, and through your consistency of inquiry and questions and wanting to understand, but not understand just intellectually, a genuine embodiment. You stayed in it, unwavering, even though your adjustment was different than the usual energetic flow of everything. You had a commitment to whatever I was doing before wasn't the thing because it was eating away at me. And you spoke to that perfect recognition of the difference between the alleviation from escape, right? Was that initial thing you felt. And I am so grateful you spoke to it like that. The recognition that it scared you because that wasn't the aligned version of it, right? And then you spoke to the actual essence of it. It was now you felt alleviation from liberation, genuine freedom of something's opened up with an opportunity for you to step into the truth of yourself authentically. Would you say that was the pathway that then began? And did you have to then take an honest account of everything? Everything prior to that, did you start to notice where you were kind of living in a denial of self or a compromise and feeling those hits? And where have you started to make those adjustments where you show up differently? And where has it been say more effortless an approach? And where have you had to really dig in to touch it a little bit further to keep that going?
Right. Great question. That was one of the prevalent questions as I was driving home.
Yeah.
I had been to so many weekend seminars for work, and 3-day events and 4-day events. And I worked in the fitness industry, and I'd worked in, motivational speeches, and this person hired in, and I'm going to change everything, Yeah. And I've been to enough of them to know that if you just go back to your normal life, nothing will change, right? And so the question was, how am I going to take this home? How do I take this home? And one of the best things that I did when I came home was I started a men's circle. That was my opportunity to be able to continue to do this work in Utah.
Yeah.
At that point in time, I was asking well, who else is from Utah? I was asking this. Well, so we got one other guy, Earl, right? Earl Sagewolf, beautiful brother.
Yeah.
But there's just the two of us, And so I didn't know anybody else in Utah that was doing men's work at the time, or really any of this kind of work, because it was so new for me. So I started a men's circle and started gathering men in, somewhat selfishly to begin with, because I needed to continue to check in with this. I needed to continue to have accountability. I needed to continue to have brothers that were supporting me and that I could support as we were going through different emotions and changes in life. And to this day, continue with that as such an important part of my work, to be able to make those changes and make those changes sustainable where I was at.
Yeah.
Right? Outside of that, the biggest part of it has been the verbiage that I use. Because I didn't go home and blow up my entire life. I have the same essential career that I had.
Yeah.
I have the same family dynamic that I had. I have the same friends that I had for the most part. But I changed the way that I was talking about things. Instead of, you're making me angry, right? Which now puts that on you. It's like, I have some anger coming up.
Yeah.
And stuff like that can be so subtle, but it has changed every aspect of my life. So that's been a big part of it.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, really owning my leadership in this work has been wonderful and extremely uncomfortable at times.
For sure.
I'm a big guy physically, and growing up, I had a lot of value placed on physical strength. You're Speredon, you're big, you're strong, it's what you do. What I did with that is everything else in me, I tried to be really small because I couldn't do anything about my physical size.
Right.
But in my personality, my emotional state, my opinions, I could make those small. And I didn't want to rub anybody else the wrong way. So one of the biggest things I've had to do is really say hey, I have something of value. I matter. I exist, therefore I matter.
Hey.
And from that place, I have something that I need to share with my brothers, with my sisters, really with everybody. And that's been very uncomfortable and also very rewarding.
Yeah. What's been the most uncomfortable about it? What's been the most rewarding?
The most uncomfortable is the times that I really do upset others, or that others are upset with them. Because that's the narrative. I'm going to say this and then these people aren't going to like me anymore. And I spent so much of my life in that nice guy attitude, right? Of, well, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, so I'll just keep it back, right? And most of the time, that's not even the case.
Right.
Most of the time you share something and people are like, oh, thank you. That's wonderful. Occasionally, it brings some stuff up in them and they want to project that at me. And that's okay. But that's been uncomfortable. The most rewarding part has been, there's probably not a word for it. It is my life now. It is what I'm about. It's my purpose. And so many of my friends and so many of my relationships and so many of the people that I care about came from me being willing to step into that and be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I love that you stated that, because how you mentioned your physical size, right? Like you identified with that in the family. That was what you were taught, right, in this space. And then recognizing how hard you work to be small in other ways, right? To not ruffle feathers. And now you're on this journey, even more liberation, where you're like, well, now I'm gonna shine as large as I stand, and even larger. You know what I mean? And that's dope. In the aspect of living more liberated and authentically embodied. And have you noticed that difference in your nervous system and in your like emotional maturity and all those facets? Yeah,
absolutely.
You can feel that. Yeah, for sure. I love that.
No, I've noticed that myself, and the other part that I've really loved is as I've stepped into more of the fullness of who I am, that has not required anybody to be less of them, right?
Yep.
And to the contrary, stepping into more of my fullness, I've been able to invite those that I love, not even verbally, but just by the way that I'm living, to do the same.
Yeah.
And it becomes this reciprocal, hey, I'm going to do more, you're going to do more. And we just continue to invite each other into our greatness.
Come on, greatness.
Yeah, and I've loved that.
Yeah.
I've loved that.
Beautiful. How's that slow, steady transition with the changes? How was that for your kids, right, and your wife and the family dynamic? Like, are they more receptive now? Were they more receptive early on? Was it time that it took? Was it a weave and dance? Did it kind of still, for them, they were like, okay, cool, and just keep living their lives? What was that like?
Yeah, so I have 4 children, and my wife, Sarah.
Yeah.
And for all of them, it's probably been different. I was not communicating very well with anybody about what I was going through. And so when I started communicating with all of them, really with everybody, there was some surprise on their part because they didn't know that I'd been going through all of the stuff
that you were going through. Yeah.
Because damn it, I'm a man and I can hold it all in and I'm suffer in silence and
shit.
Yeah.
Y'all know that story? Fuck. Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's the narrative that I'm telling myself. And it's not helping them. It's not helping me.
100%.
And I'm not sharing it with any other men. So as I come back and I'm like, hey, this is where I've been. And this is what I've been going through. And here's where I'm hoping to go, from this. There have been special moments with everyone in my family where I've been able to show up in better ways for them because of that, almost immediately. My son, Rock, there was a moment, he was 12 at the time, he's 14 now.
Yeah.
But he came in to talk to me about what he was going through. And I almost immediately was able to take some things that I had learned.
Yeah, take your time, bro.
And we had this moment with him looking in the mirror, developing that love for himself. So I'm so grateful. There's been a lot of times where I've been caught up in this regret of being 40 before I recognized and learned a lot of these things. And I've accepted that, and it is what it is. And I'm also so grateful that for my children, especially at 12 years old, 10 years old, 14 years old, that I can help them now start to do some of this stuff and learn some of these things.
Yeah. That's powerful, man.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, man. What a journey.
Yeah, it's been, and obviously, like a big part of that was creatorhood, because I signed up for creatorhood right away, and I wanted more Kevin Walton in my life. I'll never forget in those first days when I was online doing that course, and Sarah walked by and saw the computer and was like, "That's a gorgeous man. I think I could listen to this stuff too." And obviously to this day, she still loves you.
Yeah, I love her too. She's awesome, man. You guys are so cool. I love it.
So yeah, it's been really wonderful, both with Sacred Sons and with Creatorhood. And one in my life does not go without the other. I haven't experienced one, without the other in the embodiment of masculinity.
Straight up.
And with Creatorhood together.
What's that weaving been like for you? With the foundation of Creatorhood and stepping into this journey of brotherhood and community in that way, and even with what you started in Utah with it, what's the weaving of that foundation and embodiment dance like for you?
In men's work, there are a lot of different ideas around what men's work is like. You've got like this boot camp, like we're going to tear you down, turn you into nothing, and then build you back up the way that we want, right? And that exists out there in the world. And then you've got kind of this level of male apologist, which is, we're all awful. We've always been awful. We'll always be awful. And please just allow us to still exist. And so you've got these two extremes.
Yeah.
And a lot of men, myself included, come into men's work in a place of hurt and frankly, desperation. And they're ready to be broken down, or they already are. But with Creatorhood, and with the empowerment that comes with that of letting you know, like, hey, you are already whole. You are already connected. You're already empowered. It's not about you being broken down. It's about you being broken open, right?
Yep.
And I've been able to show up in this work in those ways, I think beautifully, to support men that they're not here to be like Joe or be like Kevin or be like Adam Jackson, right? They're here to be the full expression of themselves.
Yep.
And we can help them understand what that is, right? So that weaving of that in the men's work has been absolutely integral, rather than showing up and saying, yes, you are that. Yes, you do need to do this. Yes, we are going to tear you down to nothing, or whatever that might be. We really come in with some very empowering statements and empowering beliefs right away to start to drive hope rather than hopelessness.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that you stated that. And I would kind of liken it to actually drive into faith, right, and trust, like the strength of realizing that they're connected to something greater, you know? And I love that you stated it that way, the recognition of it's not about you like demoralizing yourself to the point where you finally just give up to then be like, make, whatever it is, but to know that you can live in the most intense experience, feel like you're at the depths of your struggle, and recognize you're a part of something greater that still lives in you, even in that state. And to be able to draw that out of someone, that they start to step into it while still owning the shit they got to own, right? And the misalignments, but recognize that A, that's not all they are. B, just because they're going through that doesn't mean they're broken or sick or somehow less, right? And that they can tap into that. And I love that you say that, because that's been the exact same experience for me in that regard.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate that reflection in that, in that space.
We talk a lot about owning your shit, right?
100%.
And that's an integral aspect. But by God, you will own your greatness too.
Exactly.
Right? It can't be one or the other. It can't be one without the other.
All of it,
right?
100%.
It has to be all of it.
Yep.
And I see that often in men, and people in general, where I started a business and it failed, but it failed because the economy was bad. And it failed because, there's just saturated market or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if the business succeeds, it succeeded because I'm great, because I'm brilliant, right? And internally, you know the difference, and you know that you're creating this dissonance.
Yep.
You have to own all of it.
100%.
When you do that, it becomes effortless to move forward.
In that space, because that's such a valiant thing to practice. So there's the ownership piece that's like, you will own it all, because obviously that's what love does, right? Love is that thing that says, can honor where you are and then demands the more of you, that magnitude, that greatness. And and that's probably one of the treats of watching your journey. You know what I mean? Of watching you continue to step further into your bigness, like the spirituality of your bigness, the love of your bigness, right? Like the heart of you. And I relish in it, man, witnessing your reflection. Like, I love that journey. And when we think of this ownership piece, then there's the other space of it, right? Where when owning yourself, with what roles and responsibilities, and therefore what you're accountable to, so you know where your ownership is and where that goes, and then where the other line is, where you don't take on other people's stuff, right? Like, to know what they're responsible for in relation to that dynamic. How has that journey been for you to navigate that space? Has it been an easier journey? Did it take some time to grasp that space of knowing, okay, so if I'm owning my words, my choices, when I'm doing, if I've made decisions that brought me here, and I want to make decisions that bring me here, and this is within my wheelhouse to own, and then you're having a dynamic with someone who maybe they do have things coming up, because you mentioned earlier, right, about certain things you were doing, some people feeling upset, but knowing that if they're feeling upset, there's something coming alive for them, right? And for you to know that what you're responsible for is how you show up in relation to them and your involvement and consideration, but not to take on their, sorry, I made you feel, that thing. How was that adjustment in the embodiment of this work for you?
So the biggest switch that I've been able to make, because immediately in the past I would get very defensive. And in that defensiveness, I would want to shut that down as quickly as possible.
Straight up.
Right?
Yeah.
Somewhat avoidant, because it's very uncomfortable at the prospect of, now I have to own all of this stuff, and I don't know if I want to own all of it, but it's not going to be an option. So I just wanted to avoid it and shut it down quickly, right?
Yeah.
And regretfully, I've done that in ways where I've enabled people. And I recognize the times that I've done that. But now showing up really with curiosity. Curiosity has been the biggest game changer for me in any of that.
Yeah.
So when somebody comes to me and says, hey, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I'm feeling, or even if they're just straight up, you're making me angry, you've done this to me, I've been acted upon, rather than immediately getting defensive or wanting to shut that down, or, okay, well, let's get you this and let's just numb it all, right? Tell me more about that. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What's been your experience there? Why do you feel that way, right? What's important to you about that? And in that place, oftentimes it works itself out before I even really have to say anything. Because as they say more, it becomes very apparent that I didn't make you angry or I didn't make you sad.
It starts to reveal itself through their actual exploration, through your inquiry of them.
Yeah. And so then I just get to reflect back the things that I'm hearing rather than shutting it down. And so the emotion gets to be met and actually move through rather than shove that back down, So that's been wonderful. It's just curiosity, just wanting to ask questions. Because at the end of the day, I can be curious. And even if they're not willing to meet me in that, I know that I'm not going to need to take that on. I get to reflect on what they're sharing. And
absolutely.
Hey, am I showing up in misalignment? Is there something there that I need to work on?
Nice.
Without, you're right, I'm awful. I need to be punished. I need to be, whatever it is.
Right. The narrative.
Yeah.
Do you have a moment where you recognize that started to shift in real time more? Or was it kind of something that actually naturally kind of came up in you when you started to explore this thing from reality creation? Was it a buildup? Was it a quick transition? Was it something you were already doing that just strengthened? What was that, the ability to go into that curiosity and inquiry? What was that transition like for you?
I don't think there was a specific moment.
Okay.
I think as I was on this journey for myself and so curious about who I was, right? And really I was dedicating so much time every day to becoming more self-aware and just curious with myself.
Yeah.
And so in the mornings, I'm reflecting back on previous years and previous relationships and previous friendships and previous whatever, and be like, why did I show up that way? What was going on for me? And so I really developed that curiosity with myself because I wanted self-awareness. And then it naturally follows that I would do that with others, right? And so, there wasn't a specific moment. It was just a dedication to that practice of curiosity with self that really led to that for me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I would imagine then you noticed that transition in relational dynamics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Things started to flow more. It's so beautiful.
And it's empowering to everybody else.
Yeah.
So now somebody comes up to me and says, you made me angry. I need you to say sorry for making me angry. I would never do that to you.
Nice.
And they're like, what are you talking about? Why would I disempower you like that? To say that I have control over your emotions, right? And they have to take a second to think about that, right?
Exactly.
And so then we get to a point of hey, I hear you and I'm here with you. You're angry, you're sad, whatever it is. I'm here for it. Let's work through that. But I'm not going to disempower you that way.
Yeah.
And so we work through it and they actually feel much better about themselves.
100%.
Regardless of what they feel about me. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful, man. I love it, dude.
Yeah.
I love you, brother. That's so fire. So in the spirit of this, what would you like to see, right? And through this beautiful lens that we've been developing here at Sacred Sons, and even through the life path and operating system rights of creatorhood, what would you like to see take place more in the world? As men are watching this and maybe they're in a position where either they've been doing dope things they want to compound, or they're really struggling and they're looking for some guidance. What would you like to see more of, or invite them into, or if there's something you can share in relation to that?
What I say a lot about men's work is we are filling a need that is not yet a recognized want. And so while I believe many men subconsciously and very deeply inside want to be met in these spaces by their brothers.
For sure.
They want this connection. There are layers and layers and layers on top of that before you can get to that. So what we're doing and what we just need to do so much more of is normalizing this work. To say it's not this particular demographic of men that's showing up for this, right? And so if you're religious, Does this require you to like step away from your religion? No, not at all, right? If you're a particular race, is this for particular? No. If you're particular sexual orientation or your marital status, or if you have children, whatever it is, this work is for everyone. And so when Adam Jackson says, all of you is welcome here, it's saying all of who you are, but also all of us,
100%.
right, are welcome here.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just getting this out in front of as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, so that they can know that it exists. I didn't know that it existed, right? I went back to Utah thinking that I had to just create something there because I wasn't aware of anything that existed there, right? As far as like my day-to-day practices and stuff with men's work.
Yeah.
And so like finding out that there's this stuff here and there's these men that will care about you and love you just inherently, just because you're you. You don't have to show up in a certain way. You don't have to perform. You just have to get there. Let us see you. Let us meet you. Let us love you. And let the catharsis and the healing that comes from that connection just happen. In so many instances, it's effortless to be able to do that. And so for me, it was that first moment, that first day with Sacred Sons, the first man I meet, and I meet him in the eyes and they're asking questions about what masks do you wear? And what are you afraid of? And I'm looking at this man, I'm like, he doesn't get it. He doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know my struggle. He doesn't know my story.
Yeah.
And then he goes first in answering the questions and he takes my answers, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, not just me?
Yeah.
I'm not alone. I'm not the only one feeling these things. I'm not the only one feeling like I have to repress all of those things. So it's just getting this to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, so that they can start stepping in and evolving for themselves.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. And that's such an important dynamic, the realization of just how much we all can actually relate to each other no matter what. And to know that what's wild, even in through my journey with creatorhood and with Sacred Sons, like you just recognize it, just how much like we're all telling the same story with a different shirt on. You know what I mean? And how and the misalignments and the things that are happening, the struggles in our lives, they're just these fractal representations of these consistent things of which we all are like asking ourselves to navigate, but now navigate together. And then how to live something greater beyond that. And so I love that you say that, because it is that realization. I love that way of describing it. Like, this person took my answers. It's like are you following me? Right? And that, I think that's one of the most powerful things, is that direct recognition of you are not alone. You know, and we've convinced ourselves we were for so long. And I found that interesting with the nature of the journey of going from boyhood to manhood, in that sense of like, well, it's a struggle. Is it a struggle for me to be able to share with the men around, my boys around me, because this isn't really that vulnerable of a space? And then I put that on my partner, because then they don't understand it, right? Because I've been around women that are like, man, don't be acting like a bitch, you know? And,
right.
And then we have our brothers where, and for me, I always love the idea of being able to drop in with my brothers in like some vulnerable ways, but there's still spaces I just didn't feel like we could go at times, until, for me, it was tapping more into this access that became creatorhood that started to open that up for me.
Yeah.
And then being able to bring that into this container as we're stepping in, and you start to recognize that pattern, right? Where for men, there was like no space that felt established for us to have that. And that's part of the culture now we're molding in this thing. So I love that.
Absolutely.
And when you mentioned a couple things in terms of like, it doesn't matter religion, right? Culture, language, even, right? And different colors, cultures. In the spirit of that for you, with the religion that you're in, and then you're experiencing this, that changed a lot about your life and the way you thought, and even with creatorhood, what was that like for you, accessing this insight and this growing in this awareness, and your relationship to your religious practice that you had before and after? What's that like? Is it different? Is it more enhanced? Is it altered? What's been the change of that for you, if any?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one I get asked often, because the immediate assumption is, because I'm here, obviously means I must have had to have left my religion, right? At its core, in Christianity, Christ taught to love God, to love your neighbor, and to love yourself. And there is nothing in anything that I have experienced with creatorhood or Sacred Sons that is contrary to that.
100%.
As a matter of fact, it is incredibly supportive of that in every way.
Yeah.
And so for me, I feel like my relationship to God is stronger than it's ever been. Now, culturally, within the LDS Church, yeah, there are some things that I've recognized, right, within the culture that I don't necessarily agree with, and areas where people are maybe playing out some misalignments within, again, the culture of it. But within Christianity at its core, within that belief to, love God. And yes, here some people call that source, and some people call that universe, and some people call it, whatever you call it. But to also love your neighbor, to love your brother, and to love yourself. I mean, damn it, that's exactly what we're saying every day. That's exactly what we're talking about. So to me, one does not require you to step away from the other.
Absolutely. Yeah. Beautifully expressed, brother.
Thank you.
Joe, it's an honor spending this time with you, bro.
It's been amazing.
I love it. Yeah. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your willingness to share your eloquence and even clarity of your answers and the journey you've been on, man. Like, even such a shining light of one that can transform and make these transitions, and it not be this thing that becomes a battle to what was already started. Like you say, it didn't blow your life up. It was like, now this energy, this access is what I want to bring to the table and everything I'm a part of and that I care about.
Right.
And that's been such an awesome treat to witness, because that is the dance of synergy, right? And of how things all work together, and instead of it being a battle, like, well, now I'm doing this, so all this must be, it was like, so now how does this work within this framework I created, and how can this enhance or elevate it? And I love watching your journey and continuing to watch this journey of that as you step into it,
Thank
It's
you,
really
brother.
powerful. Yeah.
Thank you for who you are. Thank you for the way you've shown up. The name Kevin Walton is a regular name in my household because of how profound your influence has been in my life. And my family knows you. They know Adam Jackson. They know Jason McKenzie. They know these men, and they know how important you men are to me. And as much as I miss them when I'm gone, when I'm at events like this, they've been an absolute support because of these connections and these relationships. And I'm so excited for where this is going, both with Sacred Sons and with Creatorhood. It's just so exciting to witness.
I appreciate
Here
you,
for
bro.
it.
You will live in my heart forever. And I'm excited for what we'll continue to build, and know that I honor and cherish you and your family. And you all have a very designated space in my heart, man. And so we'll keep doing it.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And as we bring this moment to a close, if there's anything on your heart you'd want to express out there into the world for the men listening, that you want them to know from your heart to them, what would you say to them?
I know the story. I know the story that this is for other people. I know the story that this isn't for me. I know the story that nobody cares about me. I know the story that nobody gets what I'm going through. It's not accurate. We hear this all the time. So many men saying, I feel alone. I feel isolated. Nobody cares. We care.
We do.
We care. And will it require some discomfort? Absolutely. But that is so much better than pain. It is so much better than pain. So it's an invitation. Get here. Get here.
Get here.
Join us. We're here. We're waiting for you. We're ready for you.
Open arms.
Yeah.
Thank you for expressing that, brother.
Thank you.
Love this guy. This is my brother right here. Thank you for tuning in to Sacred Sons podcast, coming to you live here from Florida at our Leadership Summit. This is Source Radiance signing off with you with my dear brother, Joe Speredon. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.